So it's always a pleasure to welcome this guy onto the channel. First time this season, Sky Sports, Mark McAdam. How are you? Thank you for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. All good. I'm happy now that the hectic transfer window has come to an end. It's been a long summer, which exploded into life at the beginning of June, and I finished with a bit of a bang at the end of the window on September the 1st. So right now I can just chill a little bit, just a small fraction.
Well, this video is about us trying to summarise Bournemouth's roller coaster already to the start of this Premier League. But first of all, Mark, you've been doing some great stuff on Sky Sports, Soccer Saturday, of course, transfer shows as well. You look like you're enjoying life.
Yeah, definitely. I've got the best job in the world. I get paid to watch football. I get to meet players and managers up close and personal, do interviews, and just find out the inner workings of how football works, what it's like, and you know, those brilliant moments that we witness on a Saturday. I can get right up close to someone and ask them the questions directly after the match, and it's brilliant. And yeah, I'm so blessed and lucky to do this job, and amazingly, I'm still doing it after all these years. So yeah, very, very privileged.
We're not amazed. You're absolutely great. But we're going to get on with this video. And let's start. Look, it was a shock to me that we got to the Premier League. We had a great manager the first time, 5 years in the Prem. We got relegated. Although I did believe, Mark, that we had a very good squad in that first Championship season to bounce back. We didn't. Second time round, we'll talk about Scott Parker in more depth later on, but he did get the job done. We did go back to the Premier League, beating Nottingham Forest 1-0. What a goal from Kiefer Moore. But are you surprised that little old Bournemouth are back in the top flight again?
Well, it's a fairy tale, isn't it? It's brilliant. And I love the fact that not only did we get there in 2015, amazing achievement, then we went on to stay there for 5 seasons, which is just incredible. And now we're back again, which shows with the right people running the football club, the right manager in place and the right players, regardless of how little people say you are, you can still punch above your weight and compete with the very best. And that's exactly what Bournemouth have done. And I think, you know, you have to credit Maxim, you have to credit Neil and Richard, because not only did they keep investing in the club, invest in the right times and do things in the right way, they stuck with it, because you see so many of those big clubs that come out of the Premier League that struggle to get back there because they just can't compete. They're not running the right way. They don't have the right people in place, and they overspend whilst they're there, and they have too many players on big wages. And it's all these factors that affect things moving forward. Whereas for Bournemouth fans now, they can be proud of the fact that they've been run sustainably and properly, and they're now back in the big time. And I think it's hugely exciting. And I'm really pleased that the club has been able to do this. We got so close the year before, you know, the year we came down, we got into the playoffs and were beaten by probably the best side in the division in Brentford. So you can't be too unhappy with that. So yeah, immensely proud of what they've done and how they've done it. And once again, I think, you know, we can be excited for the season to come.
Now, after those pitch scenes that we had against Nottingham Forest, I did sit back the next day, Mark, and think, right, how do we attack this Premier League season? You've just talked about the board there, and there are some frustrations within the fan base after those 5 years in the Prem, 500 million, whatever came into the club, that we didn't really take a legacy out of it. Well, the club were quite clear in the fact that this time round, they were going to focus the money slightly differently, and they've already spoke about that training ground. They're going to do something. It might not be the big thing that they thought they would like to have initially, but it's going to be stepping stones, and we know there's going to be pitches down there very, very soon. That was key for me. That sort of told me that this transfer window would not be about maybe spending lots of money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there's 2 ways to look at things. The club is really conscious about having a training ground that meets the high standards that they've met on the pitch, and to continue that development of the team, they need to have the best surroundings and the best training ground. So that's something they're focusing on at the moment, and will be done in stages as a continual development project over the course of the next few years. So they have started that work. They did actually, of course, you know, buy this incredible piece of land over at Canford Magna that was a golf course. So they have this brilliant platform to build the training ground. It's just something that's going to be done in stages. You also have to remember that building costs, building materials, the whole industry has completely changed over the course of the pandemic. So things are far more expensive now than they were 3 or 4 years ago. So that has to be taken into consideration. So that's something that's happening, and that's really positive, and that's good. And then, of course, the other thing that you have to sort of be aware of is that the investment in the team is something that has to be done in the right way. A lot of people forget that there was in excess of £30 million spent whilst we were in the Championship to try and get to the Premier League. That was a huge level of investment at that time. If the club hadn't have got promoted, who would have fit the bill? It would have been Maxim. Maxim would have had to have continued to run the club, pay the wages, and keep the team going. So there was a gamble on his part by investing so much money. We signed 7 players in the January transfer window. We brought in a whole new backroom team and a new manager in Scott Parker to try and get the job done. So there was a significant level of investment there, invested in new players. And of course, they were trying to do the right things. They were trying to offload those big earners on the wage bill and do everything they possibly could to get back to the Premier League. And they did it. So I think there needs to be a little bit of perspective and a little bit of credit due where it needs to go to Scott and his backroom team, and of course the football club for doing things in the right way. So it always meant that this summer was going to be a slightly different summer with regards to recruitment. I think they acted really quickly to get 2 free transfers in Ryan Fredericks and Joe Rothwell, 2 players that have good experience, good knowledge. Joe was one of the best Championship midfielders. Ryan's got bags of Premier League experience and has had a fantastic journey with West Ham as well. So you've got 2 players there that were signed on a free transfer. And then, of course, they went and spent a little bit of money on Tavernier. I think Neto and Senesi were 2 really good signings. And then Jack Stevens as well, a loan from Southampton down the road. Now, the actual spend on players is between 25 and 30 million. So when you add that to the 30 million already spent at the beginning of the year, you're looking at in excess of an investment of 60 million pounds. And then, of course, when you start to look at the wages, that's another commitment that sometimes people forget. If you're paying someone £50,000 a week and they sign a 4-year contract, that's basically 12.5 million. If you've signed 6 new players, all on 50 grand a week, 6 times 12.5, and what's that? 100 million pounds. That's the type of investment that Maxim has made this summer. So I think it's very easy for fans to spend other people's money. It's very easy to sit there and go, we need to spend money, we need to invest in players, we need to get this person and that person, this person. And I think that was really clear from the statement of when Scott left. One of the things that Maxim mentioned was being in the same strategy and the same alignment with regards to recruitment and the money that's being spent. And I just think, as a Bournemouth fan, the most important thing for me is that Bournemouth are there in a year's time, and 2 years' time, and 5 years' time, and 10 years' time. And if that means that we have to be really careful with the money we spend, and it means we have to be more sustainable, and it means we have to be careful with the wages, I've got absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. And it means if we become like a West Brom or a Norwich and we go up and down, up and down, up and down, I've got no problem, because I love the Championship. And I would rather see us in some ways compete at the top of the Championship, winning 4 or 5 by 4 or 5 goals, picking up 3 points each week, enjoying watching the team play, have the elation of promotion, and then trying to compete with those sides in the Premier League, which, as we know right now, is almost, it's not impossible, but it's so difficult. So I have no issues at all with what's been done. And I think being sustainable, doing things in the right way, keeping to our philosophy of attacking, exciting, attractive football, developing young players, making money, those things are all big ticks as far as I'm concerned.
I think you summarised that beautifully, and I very much backed what we were doing this summer, with knowing that concentration was going to move to that training ground. And we've spent about the money I'd expect us to spend based on that theory. You can't have everything. And we will come back to the point that our stadium is 11,000 seater stadium. So you have to take everything into it. This leads on lovely then, Mark, to my next question. Now, if you remember when Scott Parker got promoted with Fulham in that playoff final, I thought his interview was interesting. If you'd have joined that interview halfway through, you would have thought that Fulham had lost that final, because he was almost saying, we got promoted, but this is going to be difficult, because it almost felt like he was battling with the board already moments after getting promoted. So as we got promoted from the Premier League and we went into pre-season, he was already starting to mention after Real Sociedad that we're not quite equipped. We're going to need more. I don't think these players maybe have it in the locker. that was going to rub a few fans up. I know it rubbed me up because I've seen a manager take players from League One and compete in the Premier League. And that's where it was starting to hurt me a little bit, because I backed Scott Parker, Mark, to get us promoted from the Championship. I worried about him in the Premier League. And all we want to do, Mark, like you've said, is compete in this league. I'm not bothered if we get relegated, but let's go out. Let's go out competing, losing 3-2, 2-1. Did you think it was a dangerous game that Scott Parker was playing early on in pre-season?
I don't think he was necessarily playing a game. I think it certainly caught a lot of people by surprise at his apparent negativity. Scott Parker is a hugely successful Premier League player, and played for some of the biggest clubs in the Premier League, was hugely successful, was a big part of England at one stage, and was without question one of the greats of the Premier League era at a certain time. So it surprises me because he battled against the odds on so many occasions. He went on from Charlton to play for Chelsea, and then went to play for likes of Spurs and West Ham, and play for great clubs. He played for his country, and was a top talent. I just think perhaps he underestimated the quality of the group, the resilience of the group, the togetherness of the group, and he hasn't been aware necessarily of the journey that Bournemouth have been on. And you've summed it up perfectly. League One players into Premier League players, and not just for one season or 2 seasons, but for 5 seasons. And that's what this whole club has been built on, a foundation of people fighting against the odds and being together and doing everything they possibly can to, put Bournemouth on the map. And I think that was something that perhaps was lost in translation, really. So, yeah, a little bit surprised at some of the comments. Of course, you have to remember sometimes managers say things thinking, this will get the best out of my players. This will make them sit up and think, right, I need to perform. I need to prove the manager wrong. I know a number of managers in the EFL at the moment that have that kind of reverse psychology. I'm going to tell my players they're not good enough, which I know in retrospect is going to make them even better because they're going to be determined to prove me wrong. You could look at this all sorts of different ways in terms of, what managers want to do and how they do it. I think, the thing is, respect the club, which is key. Respect the owner and the investment that he's made. Respect the players that are currently there, and I think you'll get a much better result. At the end of the day, it's history now. It is what it is. And let's be honest. At the end of the season, if we go down, Scott Parker will say, "Well, I kind of told you that you weren't good enough and the players weren't good enough." And if we stay up, everyone will point to Scott Parker and say, well, you said this group was under-equipped and not good enough. And guess what? They're still in the Premier League, so you were wrong. And that's what football's all about. It's just about opinions.
It is fair, though, to say that Scott Parker did complete the remit that he was asked to do when he came in. JT wasn't able to do it. Woodgate, with all the best efforts, wasn't able to get over the line. And he did the job. And I've always said that credit where credit's due. He got this club back into the Premier League. And you have to give it to him there. But Liverpool 9-0, Mark, was a shock to me. I mean, we've not seen it many times in the Premier League, only a few. We know the club up the road from us have been on the end of them as well. But when I saw those... Twice.
Don't forget that. Leicester and Manchester United.
Twice. When I saw the post-match comments, he lost me. I mean, I've always backed him. And when he came out with those comments, and I felt like he didn't take much of the blame, I was worried for him. I had a sort of a conversation with a friend of mine off air and sort of said I'd give him 2 games to turn it around against Wolves and turn it around against Nottingham Forest. The club obviously decided it was the end of the road before that. You did a brilliant evaluation of the situation because everyone else outside of Bournemouth thinks it's to do with the 9-0. It's not to do with the 9-0. It's deeper than that. And I thought you did a fantastic job to summarise that. And yeah, just tell us again, how we got to this place where the club decided that it was time for Scott Parker to leave.
Yeah, well, I obviously was surprised at some of the comments off the back of various games over pre-season at the start of the campaign as well. And clearly a 9-0 is never an ideal scenario. You have to remember the players and managers, they literally finish the game at 10-5 or whatever time they kick off at. They have 5 minutes with the players in the dressing room, and then they have to come out and do probably about an hour's worth of media. There'll be 3 or 4 TV interviews. There'll be a whole load of radio interviews, then there'll be press conferences, then there'll be Sunday papers, then there'll be Monday interviews. So the manager at the beginning of those interviews is at his most raw, and clearly he'll be upset, hurting and disappointed. Maybe that was the time to support the players. So many times you'll hear and see managers tear a strip off the players in the dressing room, but come out and back them in the media, because that's generally what happens. Behind closed doors, you can say what you want, you can be honest, but publicly you have to support the team and you have to show that you're together. And that was probably where at Anfield he didn't look like he was together with that group of players. I was in the makeup room at Sky, and I got a text message at about 8:45. I was shaving in my shorts. I was getting ready to go on air for the football show, which was at 10 o'clock. And that was the basic kind of scenario. And then I think it was about 5:02 or bang on 9 o'clock in the morning, the club released the statement that Scott had been sacked. And then I had an hour to completely rewrite a whole show for 10 till 12. And then I ended up jumping on at the transfer show at about 9:30, where we spoke for about 15 minutes about the situation. And I didn't know a great deal at that time, but I knew that, the club were more unhappy with the comments than the results. The results were just completely irrelevant in this situation. And that was their main instigator for deciding to make a change. Like you say, and like you rightly point out, Scott Parker's brief was to get Bournemouth promoted. He absolutely did that. 51%. He did that. At the start of the season, we got promoted. Bournemouth were brilliant for, I think, the first 17, 18, 19 games. Yeah. They played some really effective football. I remember 2 or 3 matches. I think the Bristol City game at home stood out for me as being a really special occasion and a game where you went, wow, if this is the Scott Parker Bournemouth, then we are in for a great treat. I think there were ups and downs, like all promotion campaigns. Perhaps a few more downs at the tail end of the season where performances weren't particularly strong, but then it all came to a head against Nottingham Forest, that big grudge match against the side also trying to get promoted, where Bournemouth were the better side, and tactically Scott got it right. So there were so many good things in that campaign and so many good things in his short tenure that will be remembered, and rightly so. I just think it was the lack of alignment in the strategy for signing players, the money that was being invested, and those kind of things where everything just became a little bit apparent that it just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't the match made in heaven we thought it might be or hoped it might be. But that's football, and the club moves on. I think what's happened since then has proven that group is more than capable of competing in the Premier League. 4 points from 2 games is brilliant. The comeback against Forest, I think, shows you a lot as well, with the character and the spirit within that group. The fact that Forest brought in 21 new players, spent 150 odd million pounds. I've lost track of how much they spent now. And Bournemouth were able to come back and beat them at the City Ground. I think that shows so much about this group. And I think Gary O'Neill, Sean Cooper and Tommy Elphick all have to take credit for whatever they've done in that very short space of time to build a really resilient team that are now focused on staying in the Premier League.
And interestingly, we will ask you your thoughts on where the club go now. Before we go on to those 2 games where we picked up 4 points, it's more than just about players coming into the club, as you know, Mark, and we need to credit, and I did this when the transfer window shut, I appreciated what we still had. Did I think we would have Jeff Lerma after relegation and 2 championship seasons? No, I didn't. Getting Dom Solanke on a brand new deal. As we speak right now, Chris Mepham has just signed a new deal until 2025. We got Mark Travers on a long-term contract, and Lloyd Kelly is captain at the club. It was so big for the board, for Neil, Maxim, to make sure that focus didn't drive away from the actual team. And I think there's been some really good work done there, even if people think we haven't done enough bringing players in.
Absolutely. You have to remember, if you go out and buy Dom Solanke, a goal scorer, right now, how much would it cost you? 30 million quid?
Easy.
Yeah, 50 million quid, 30 million quid. And then you have to give that kind of a player who commands a fee of between 30 and 50 million, probably 75, 80,000 pounds a week, and give him a 5-year contract, and then put a relegation clause in his contract, because if he doesn't want to hang around with the club going to the Championship because he fancies himself as a much better player. You know, what does that say? What kind of a message does that send out to the rest of the dressing room or to the club? Actually, keep the players that have done well for you. Re-sign them on new contracts. Keep them at the football club. So signing new contracts saves you spending 30 to 50 million pounds on a player. That's the reality of it. So I'm really impressed with the fact that the club's been able to do that and sign on some players for longer term deals. I think that's really important. I think the fact that they've brought in a couple of really exciting players from the Championship is good. I think there's a couple of players in there with development potential, players that potentially could go on. And I think the other thing to remember as well, when we came up in 2015, and I've said this before, we had 3 players with Premier League experience. When we came up this time around, we had more players. In fact, we had 11 players with Premier League experience. We didn't need to go and sign the spine of a team because Mark Travers was a great goalkeeper with huge potential. Lloyd Kelly was someone that played in the Premier League. Adam Smith had Premier League experience. Jefferson Lerma, Philip Billing, Lewis Cook. You know, the heart of our midfield had all big Premier League experience. And then the same when you go through to Dom Solanke. So you had the spine of a team there that was immediately, in our own eyes, good enough for the top flight. And I think that was something that was reflected in the business that we did. We didn't need to go and sign those players because we already had them. I think the other things you have to look at as well, which made this summer's transfer window very different to those of the past, was that there was a lot of money spent and a lot of money was spent on certain players. For example, you know, Morgan Gibbs-White going for £42.5 million. You know, Nico Williams going for £17 million. You know, that's a lot of money, you know, huge sum of money for 2 players. And the market was almost inflated. You look at Manchester United signing Anthony for 100 million euros. You know, they signed a 30-year-old Casemiro for 17 million pounds. The whole window this summer was massively inflated. Almost 2 billion pounds was spent by Premier League sides, which is the most in any summer ever. So therefore, for a club like Bournemouth, and like you've said, that has 11,700 people coming to games, they can't compete on that level. So they have to get creative. They have to do things in their own way. And if that means they don't spend that money, but they take a few more gambles or develop some younger players or try and keep a hold of the players, then I think that's absolutely the right thing to do.
And it doesn't guarantee you 3 points in the Premier League as well.
You said that, not me.
I said it. I absolutely said it 100%. So as we move on then to the amazing week that we had last week, and Gary O'Neill, Tommy Elphick, Sean Cooper were tasked with getting this team off the floor and trying to get some performances on the pitch. And Wolves, I said, Mark, that we needed to just show heart, passion, that we might not be technically the best. Premier League will write us off. Please do write us off because that's where you're playing into our hands. We got a very, very good point at home. Even if it required a Lloyd Kelly clearance off the line, we got it. Then we went to Nottingham Forest. I actually was away because it was my wife's birthday, Mark, and I was trying to keep up with the score. I lost my signal at 2-0. Could not believe it. Lost it at half time. It came back and it had been 3-2. I was getting notifications, WhatsApp messages, as you can probably imagine. Could not believe my eyes. Had to get onto the Sky Sports app to get the highlights up. Together, anything is possible. This has proved a point to someone that's just recently left the club that you don't have to be technically the best. Yes, it can help, but a little bit of heart, a little bit of commitment, and you can compete in this Premier League.
Absolutely. I was doing Soccer Saturday. I was doing Portsmouth against Peterborough. And obviously, whilst you're doing the game, you can hear Soccer Saturday. So I can hear Jeff, I can hear the panellists, and I can hear all the scores coming in and everything that's going on. And at half time, when it was 2-0, I was just on the floor and I was so upset. And then 2-1, I turned around to my mate and I went, 2-1, come on. 2-2, and I'm, you know, and then at 3-2, I'm dancing around Fratton Park. I'm not even watching what's going on the game. I'm just happy that Bournemouth have got to 3-2 and they look like they might pick up a huge 3 points. So yeah, it was brilliant, and character and passion and just everything you want to see from your side was on display there. I love the fact that there was a tactical switch as well for Gary O'Neill, who went from a back 4 to a back 3. He made a brave decision at half time to take someone off, put someone on. It could have ended up 4-0. But luckily for Gary and for Bournemouth, and with a little bit of insight and a little bit of thoughtfulness, they've managed to turn things around. And yeah, a lot of credit should go to Gary and his team. The other thing, I think, credit to Sean Cooper as well. He's been on the Bournemouth journey for a long, long time. He understands what this club's about and how tough times have been in the past. And Tommy Elphick has been described to me as probably the greatest captain that this football club has ever had. So the fact that he's now in that first team environment, I think will be massive. And, I think what they've done is they've taken the pressure off of Neil and Maxim and Richard, who have now got to try and find a new manager. I think if we'd lost the Wolves game and lost the Forest game, the pressure would be really on to find the right man who can turn things around. What's happened now is they've just got a little bit of a release. Let's just build on that 4 points. Let's see what we can achieve. We've got the international break in 2 games. So we've got a little period of time now where we can just get this decision right. And let's be honest, if Gary picks up another 4 points in the next 2 games, why wouldn't the club give him the opportunity? The other thing as well, the World Cup on the horizon, it will soon be upon us. And that will buy us a little bit of time should we decide to implement a manager in that period of time as well. So yeah, there's a lot of positives at the moment. I think 1 game at a time, which is really boring, and I hate it when people say it to me in interviews, and I've just said it in an interview. But I think what we've got right now is a really good steady ship that's focused on getting some points on the board and just building on the character we've shown in the last 2 games.
You know where this script is going because you've just led to my next question, which is probably the biggest question of this chat. Where does AFC Bournemouth go now? Because you know enough about football, Mark, to know that that's a bounce that we've just had. And it's a bit of a delicate situation because it'd be so easy now to give Gary O'Neill this job to the end of the season. And I'd have no issues with it. I'm sure the club are focusing on what they said they were going to focus on at the start. And that's the training ground. Bringing in someone like Sean Dyche, even unattached, might cost money. Bringing someone from another club might cost money. But what's your thoughts on this? Because it is a bounce to me. We've got results off the back of someone leaving the club that was being negative. And what does the club do now? How do you see the future for AFC Bournemouth? Who becomes the next Bournemouth manager?
It's $1 million question, isn't it? And I think one of the sort of problems or scenarios that you've got at play here is you actually don't have an obvious candidate.
Yeah.
There's no one that you look at and go, yeah, that's the right fit. That's the right fit. That's the man for the job. And often that's the case with, managerial appointments. You can almost see where the club's thinking. You look at their history, you look at the style of play, the philosophy, and you can see a manager that just fits into that straight away. Whereas right now, I don't think there is anyone that you look at and go, right, that is the next man. That is the right man to take this football club forward. I think what you've said already about Sean Dyche would probably ring true. The philosophy, probably not quite what Bournemouth would like. Don't get me wrong. Sean Dyche, incredibly talented as a manager, done some amazing things with Burnley. Excuse me. And I think he's been impressive for so many years, but I don't think he fits the mould of what a Bournemouth manager would be. It would have to be someone who's a good coach, someone that could develop players, someone that could work with younger players, someone that could improve everyone around him, someone that would take the club to the next level, someone that would, look at the philosophy and the DNA of what that football club's about and the type of football and the attractiveness of the football that's been played in the past. That's going to have to be crucial as well. So therefore, I think, there's not too many candidates out there that you'd look at and go, right, that is absolutely the right type of person at the moment. So let's wait and see what happens. I think that the key thing is that this decision is made in the right way and it's the right person. You don't want to get someone in and then find that by February the 1st, you're making a change and you're panicking. And if that means we just take a little bit longer to get the right person, then so be it. I think that's the key thing for the football club is that they just get the right man at the right time. And the good thing is they've got people in charge that understand that football club and have shown that they can pick up points. So we can be patient, we can enjoy our football, and we can wait for those people to make that huge decision and hopefully get it right.
Of course, I 100% agree with you, Mark, and you put that perfectly. And I'm sure you Bournemouth fans watching this video have enjoyed what Mark's had to say as well. So make sure you hit the like button on this video and subscribe to Cherries Red Army. Now, we got you on the channel, Mark. I'm hoping we maybe get you on in January for the next transfer window, but we do appreciate you very busy. But this weekend, Bournemouth are at home against a very good Brighton side, managed by Graham Potter, who I think could be challenging for the next England job alongside Eddie Howe. That's for another day. Got to get your thoughts on it. We've got a match preview on Thursday night at 7 p.m. for anyone who's currently watching this video. But can I get a match preview out of you for Bournemouth Brighton at the weekend?
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating game. I think when you look at the Premier League meetings between Bournemouth and Brighton, generally Bournemouth have been pretty strong. So hopefully that will continue. But they're up against a side in Brighton that have won 4 of their opening 6 matches. They've got 13 points on the board. They sold 130 odd million pounds worth of player in the summer, and they look even stronger with Graham Potter at the helm. So I'm building it up to be a really tough occasion, which it will be without question. I do really, really respect and admire what Brighton have done. They're a fantastic football club. They are the model football club as far as I'm concerned. If you were building a football club, you would look at everything that they've done and try and emulate it as best as possible, because they get it right 9 times out of 10. The recruitment's been top class. Graham Potter's been brilliant. The owner is a massive Brighton fan, Tony Bloom, but he runs it not as a fan, but as a business, which is crucial for a football club these days. They invest in the academy, they invest in the women's side, they invest in the training ground and the facilities, and they try and buy players that have their DNA and do exactly what they want them to do. And then when they go out into the window, they recruit excellent players with experience like Adam Lallana and Danny Welbeck. So I think this is going to be a real challenge. This is, a team that know how to play football. They're very, very well coached. They're very clever with what they do and how they do it. And I think this could be, another challenge, shall we say. I think if Bournemouth can ride out the early stages of the game, take the chances and take the game to Brighton, I think there's every chance they'll pick up 3 points. I'm confident we can get a positive result against them. But I do think this perhaps will be the biggest challenge of the 3 matches that Gary would have faced. I think this will challenge him tactically. And I think this is going to be, I think it'll be a great game. I think, you've got 2 brilliant sides, a little bit of South Coast rivalry in there as well. And I think, this could be the pick of the weekend for matches in the Premier League.
Fair to ask you a score prediction? Would that be fair?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll give you a score prediction. I think Bournemouth will win 3-2 again.
Love it. Absolutely love it. How are you keeping up with the Bournemouth score this weekend? Soccer Saturday?
Yeah, so I've got Watford against Reading. So Rob Edwards against Paul Ince. That should be a good game in the Championship. So I will be keeping up with that via Jeff Stelling and whoever's watching it in the studio. So I'm not sure yet, but whoever's got the game, I'll make sure I speak to them beforehand to say that, some nice positive Bournemouth reaction, please.
Fantastic. Mark, absolutely appreciate you coming on the channel. Really, really do. Any final thoughts for Bournemouth as we head into this spell up to the World Cup? We just need to keep our head above water. Finishing 17th this season will be absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's it. 17th. 17th is once again an incredible achievement for this football club. I think, if just saying 10 years down the line, we've got a stadium that holds 30,000 and we've got a training facility that's up there with the best. And then we get into the Premier League. Then you would start to say, well, 17th, you want to improve. And I'm actually going to take something from what Brighton have done. Whilst Brighton were in the Championship, they had no problem with saying the P word. Now, the P word for them wasn't promotion. It was progress. Yeah. And I think that should be exactly the same for Bournemouth. All we need to do is progress the club on and off the pitch every single week, every single season. Now, this season, staying in 17th, staying in the Premier League would be progress. And I think that's all that's important. And we just have to keep building on what we've done. And we also have to accept that sometimes things don't go to plan and you get relegated. Whether you're Watford or whether you're Burnley or whether you're Everton, who nearly got relegated, that's football. And I think we just have to know that we are giving everything, we're playing the right way, and just making our fans proud week in, week out, which they have been doing and they are doing. And I think that's the most important thing. I'm looking forward to this season. I think we're going to surprise a few teams. We've seen every single pundit in the game predict Bournemouth 20th out of 20, and so far we're not. So therefore, let's prove everyone wrong. Let's pull together. Let's support in the right way, and I think we could see a really special season once again, where there'll be a few more surprises between now and May.
And what they need to understand is they're playing into our hands. So please keep writing us off. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's have no regrets. Mark, thank you for your time. Stay well. I'm sure we'll catch up with you soon, but really appreciate all the good work you're doing for the Bournemouth fans and Sky Sports. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. And I guess we'll probably have a chat at the beginning of January, just before the window cranks into gear, and then we'll review it again at the beginning of February.
Well, that's our window anyway, isn't it, really?
Definitely, yeah.
Thanks for checking out this video. Thanks to Mark. Please do hit the like button. Get your thoughts below in the comments. But until the next video, until Brighton on Saturday, we'll see you soon. Up the cherries.